uh, our senior planner or staff to, maybe Dave, to bring us up to date under new business, if that's okay with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Remind me when we get there, because I'm sure I'll forget.
Great.
Okay. So on the motion to adopt the agenda as amended, all those, or anybody opposed? So adopted. Petitions and delegations. We have Marywood Road flooding. Malcolm Wilson and Colin Benoit will make a presentation regarding flooding problems on Marywood Road properties in Electoral Area D. So if you, are the gentlemen both here?
I'm here, Malcolm Wilson. Colin Benoit here.
Okay, Malcolm Wilson. Okay, both here. Okay, so you have 10 minutes to make your presentation, and then if the directors have any questions, they can ask you questions. But we will hold you to the 10 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee members, thank you for receiving our presentation. I will be speaking to the document that was forwarded to you last week, but first I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Malcolm Wilson, as you may tell from my accent, a Canadian by choice. 2 years ago, my wife Sally and I celebrated the 50th anniversary of that choice, and we've never for a single moment regretted it. We've lived in Quebec, in Alberta, and 16 years ago, we retired to our dream home in Area D. We are not wealthy, so like many of our neighbors, our major investment is in our home. It is the insurance that will provide for our future security. Protecting that security is the subject of my presentation today. I will speak about the potential flooding risk, and my friend and neighbor here, Colin Benoit, will speak of the more serious groundwater crawl space damage and potential health and safety issues related to it. What we need is your help to overcome apparent hurdles and interagency jurisdictional problems that are hindering the resolution of inadequate performance of the drainage system and the flooding that results. A recent communication from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure indicates that SRD has the ball in its court and may be awaiting your direction. Our location is shown on the first map in the presentation. I'm not sure whether you can see it on that screen size, but I've indicated in that map, it's this one, page 2.
Gotcha.
Okay, where Colin and I both live, it's the end of Maywood Road, the west end of Maywood Road, adjacent to us is our neighbor whose lot is on the border between Campbell River and Area D, so we're right on the edge of the Timber West Forest lands. We're about 15 meters above sea level at high tide, and we're about 700 meters from the ocean. As illustrated in that picture, there are problems in the wintertime when we have intensive rainfall events, and the water runs off from the uphill property that's owned by Timber West, and it runs down the road, and it pools in different locations. In my property, it's at the bottom of the lot, but it also obviously goes over to my neighbor's property on the other side of McGimpsey Road. Though the water's come within a meter of my home in the past, I haven't suffered any crawl space problems, and I strongly suspect that I will in the future if we can't overcome this drainage poor performance problem. Colin already has had that problem, and I'd like to turn it over to him now to present his efforts to correct it. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thank you, board, for allowing us here to speak today. As Malcolm indicated, the water that collects in our properties unfortunately flows into my crawl space when it gets too high. I have no outlet. I recently found where I had all my drainage lines checked with cameras to find where they were, because there was no evidence of them, and they are rooted out and into the roadside ditch, which I have been told that is not allowed. I'm not supposed to be there. However, I bought the house with all of this in place, and it was inspected, and all of these things were approved. The water that collects in our yards is water table, rising water table, which has no care for the jurisdictional boundaries between the regional district and the Ministry of Transport. Ministry of Transport will not allow us to put water into the ditches or alter the ditches to allow any water to flow away. We're stuck with having to deal with the water within our lots, which is tantamount to pumping water out of the bottom of a barrel and putting it in the top and expecting the level to go down. This just doesn't work. The water that is coming in to my crawl space is getting worse. It has happened over the past few years, depending on the amount of rainfall and flooding we get. This past year has the worst so far. I'm worried about crawl space issues with mold and deterioration of my property. In the course of trying to figure out what to do, I contacted a drainage specialist, and I was going to have sump pumps put in to try and accommodate the water that was flowing into my crawl space. I was advised that I was wasting my money, that I couldn't pump water fast enough into the ditches that are non-functioning because they won't carry water away, and I'm not allowed to put the water in the ditches. He advised me that he could fix the problem in half a day by opening the ditch in front of our homes and around to McGimpsey Road for $3,000, and that would catch the water table and allow drainage into the McGimpsey Road ditch, which does function but could use improvement. This problem isn't going to go away, and we are caught between two agencies, which one which won't allow us to move the water within their jurisdiction. At this point, I have no idea what to do, and we're looking for some help to improve these ditches so that we can create water flow. If the water flow would move when the high water came up, I don't think we would have a problem. It's a simple fix. And I was advised that if I took any action on my own to create this ditch, I would be liable for any downstream activities that may or may not happen. We're at odds here as to what to do. We have nowhere to go. And do we sit here and let our homes deteriorate? Our taxes keep going up, but our home value will decrease rapidly if in a home inspection for sale of our home, it points out there's a water problem. That's the whole problem in a nutshell. we need this water to move out of the area. The water table knows no jurisdictional boundaries. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'll turn it over to directors to, if they have any questions of the delegation. I have some myself, but if somebody else wants to go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Director
Okay,
Lee.
no. Hold on.
Okay,
Nova was before you,
go ahead.
actually, Brenda.
That's okay.
Thank you. No, thank you for your presentation, and I'm really sorry for your frustration. Not knowing the area, my question is, what is the interjurisdictional nature of this? It seems to me that highways is responsible for roads and ditches. In cities, that is clearly a municipal jurisdiction. In regional districts, it is the Department of Ministry of Highways. So is it interjurisdictionality between what and what? We'll have to help we can, but I don't understand how this isn't squarely highways. Please help me out.
It's Malcolm. We had a meeting with the regional, the area manager of MOT, whose name is Ashley Cousins, and an engineer from the regional district that came out to look at our site. And they explained to us that there's a policy problem with the policy of transportation, which, as Colin says, does not allow us to move surface water from our properties into these drainage ditches. And she is the one that said to Colin that if we went ahead and did it by ourselves, then we would bear the legal liability if perhaps somebody downstream had a problem with flooding on their properties. So it seemed to me that this was a public policy problem of the Department of Transportation, and I wrote to the minister and asked for clarification. And I got back a letter from Ashley saying that the minister had asked her to respond. And what she says in that is that there is somebody called the provincial approving officer who has recently approached Strathcona Regional District to discuss solution to our problem. And apparently there's no agreement made as to who's got the ball, and that's the frustration. Somehow or other, this is a ping pong game going backwards and forwards between two groups who either have no resources or no budget to do anything about this. And so we're left frustrated in the middle somehow. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, and thank you, Malcolm.
I'm just calling in because you're breaking up a little bit of my.
Am I going ahead, Mr. Chair, or is Nova still?
I had a follow-up.
Okay, Nova, I'm not sure what your problem is.
Okay,
having-
that's not working. Can I try this again?
If you could finish up.
So thank you for describing that. So what I'm just trying to understand my initial question. It's not further questions. So what I'm understanding is that you don't have permission to take surface water off your property and put it in the ditch. Is it that simple?
Yes.
And if the ditch worked better, it might have permission to put a ditch on your land and drain it into the public ditch. Is that correct?
If there was a proper ditch there, the water table would have an avenue where it could flow. And we probably wouldn't have to pump anything, although surface water needs to go somewhere, and the groundwater that comes up forming the water table needs an outlet. At this point, it has no outlet. The ditches on Marywood are non-functioning. They do not work. They do not carry the water the way.
Right.
The Ministry of Transport stance is it's their duty to remove the water from the road.
So that
And in
is,
their mind, they're
like,
doing
that is
that.
clearly a military transportation issue. Are they unwilling
Nova, if you could
to
disable, Nova,
make
Can
the
you hear me?
ditches work?
Nova, can you hear me? Nod your head or something. It's been
Yeah.
suggested that if you disable your video, your audio will be better. Okay, now try speaking. Okay, well,
Maybe,
Well,
Mr. Chair,
come
we'll
back
go
to you,
on to
Brenda.
Director Lee. Yeah.
Okay. It's
Brenda,
Director Lee
you're
here.
up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Malcolm and Colin, for your presentation. Malcolm and Colin know that I've been working on this with them for the last few years. I perceive, and I know the property well, I know the neighborhood well, and in my opinion, the water, the ditching that happened when the subdivision was created by the subdivision approving officers at Moti was insufficient for those properties. Ditches in front of Collins and Malcolm's house are no more than a mild swale. They are not proper ditches. They never got proper ditches from the get-go. And it is the Ministry of Transportation's responsibility to ensure that when they allow a subdivision, that they have all of the conveyances provided to those properties. They have the equipment, they have the mandate, and they should be coming and helping. Unfortunately, we don't have very much cooperation from the local manager, who seems to think that anything outside of the road surface is not their business. I would beg to differ. And so I do have a motion that I think might help with this, with resolving this issue. And I don't know if you want the motion now or wait till all the speakers have had an opportunity. And I'd also like staff. I know that Wolfgang Prada has been on site. He's our engineer and has looked at the problem. And I would like to know if staff have any comments or recommendations regarding how to proceed with this.
Mr. Chair, if I can, sorry, I can't put my hand up because I'm in the boardroom and you can't see me. So I
can see you.
apologize, but yeah, okay, good. My only option is to jump in. I can't put a hand up, so I'm going to apologize right now for that. On Director Lee's comment there as far as staff's concerned, so as we know, regional districts are service function based. So as she's pointed out, it's, you know, I think we agree that it should be a Ministry of Transportation issue. However, if Ministry isn't going to address that, then an alternative for the regional district to look at would be a drainage service. And if that's the will of the committee for staff to explore that, we certainly can and will. But yeah, we're looking at basically two options. It looks like we have a drainage problem. We think Ministry of Transportation and Highways should address it. If they're not going to, practically speaking, it looks like the regional district could explore that if the committee wanted to entertain a resolution that staff investigate looking at creating a service and a solution to this problem.
Okay, I'd like to interrupt at this point, please, if I may, as chair. To the two presenters, I would like to suggest to you that you are not going to the proper person to deal with your issue. She is our area manager. I deal with her at least weekly, if not every couple of days. But her supervisor is Michael Pearson. Write this down, Michael Pearson, and his email address is michael.pearson@gov.bc.ca, and his phone number is 250-751-3287. He is the top manager for our area. And I just had a very long conversation with him yesterday. He has resolved issues that were unresolvable in my area. The highways department, no matter what they are telling you, are responsible for the 66 feet of gazetted road that is there. And that 66 feet includes the ditch. So I do not understand the reluctance on the part of highways, and I would certainly never vote for the SRD to take on a provincial responsibility of keeping the ditches moving, which is the highway's responsibility. So you certainly have my support. I would certainly call Michael Pearson and explain the situation to him. He's new in the position. He's only been there a number of months, and he moved there from another high-level position. But you need to move this up the ladder, not to the minister's level. Ministers never deal with ditches. But that water is supposed to flow in the ditch. That's why people have to apply for driveways. They have to have the proper size culverts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that's my 2 cents. That's where you need to go. The SRD, I would certainly not support us taking on a provincial responsibility of having water flow on a provincial roadway. Okay, next. Were there other speakers? Okay, seeing no other speakers, Brenda, you said you had a motion.
Well, first I'd like to move receipt of the presentation with thanks to Malcolm and Colin for coming in and presenting to us.
Second.
Okay, any opposed? All those, or sorry, none opposed. Carried. Your motion?
My motion is that our staff request a hearing from the Ministry of Transportation and Highway Representative, Mr. Michael Pearson, to seek remediation of the current flooding situation on Marywood Road, which could be alleviated with proper ditching, which should have been done when the subdivision was created in the late 60s. So I think that this situation, so that's it.
Let's get the motion ends. Okay, the motion ends with what word?
Which could be alleviated with proper ditching.
Okay, that's the end of the motion. It's been
Yeah.
seconded. Anderson.
Sorry, just to jump in here, Director Lee, can you see the motion on the board? I believe that's the one you sent in.
Formal letter, yes, but there's been new information presented now by Director Abram about the new manager that oversees this. So I would like to, I have sort of amended that a little to provide a formal letter of request to Ministry of Transportation North Island for assistance in providing remediation to the current danger situation which exists, current flood danger situation which exists, in part due to inadequate ditching when the Marywood subdivision was approved by MOTI and has caused properties at 211 and 223 Marywood Road to regularly flood. And I would like, it identified that the and the last part of it, we should just leave out, that our contact and our invite to the MOTI should be Mr. Michael Pearson. If he's the one that has the authority to order improvements, then that's the person we want to talk to. And I think it's not fair to just ask the applicants to contact Mr. Pearson. I mean, they certainly should and can, but I also think the regional district needs to stand behind these residents of Area D and formally request that this issue be dealt with once and for all. It's been going back and forth between the local manager and the regional district for 2 years, and it's
Okay,
too long.
may I interrupt you for 1 second, Brenda? I think you could change your motion to just say, provide a formal letter of request to be sent to Mr. Michael Pearson of the Ministry of Transportation, etc. Everything else remains the same. And
Okay,
get rid of your last paragraph.
get rid of the last paragraph for sure. So that the Strathcona Regional District Board provide a formal letter of request to be sent to Michael Pearson of the Ministry of Transportation, North Island, for assistance in providing remediation to the current, I would just say, flooding situation. It's not a danger, it's an actual flooding situation that's ongoing. Just take the word danger out. Flooding situation which exists in part due to inadequate ditching when the Marywood subdivision was approved by MODI, and which has caused properties at 211 and 223 Marywood to regularly flood. That's good.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Gerald. Any discussion on this motion?
Yep.
Director Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering who will follow up on it, because if we don't, often letters just fall into a void. I know we don't want to get involved in, creating a service, but in terms of advocacy, is this something that we would then perhaps add to the motion and, ask staff to follow up with? Or is it we're leaving that to the director or the property owners? Thank you.
No, Mr. Chair, if I can, I think it's inherent in the motion that staff will take care of this.
Yeah, I would agree with Dave. That's basically what you're asking for.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion first of all? Okay, anyone opposed? It's carried. One final comment I'd like to make to the presenters. I've had a very similar problem on my own property, and Highways came here and told me to apply to the assessment authority, and I did. I appealed my assessment when it came time. So at the end of the year, I would suggest to both of you that you appeal to the assessment authority due to the fact that your property is being rendered unusable for those portions, and they will look at that. So that's just a suggestion. It's up to you. Okay, that's all I have to say. I'd like to thank both presenters for coming. Your information has been invaluable, and hopefully we have provided you with some extra information. We are certainly providing you with the letter you've asked for, or a direction that you've asked for, to try and straighten this out at the highways level, not at the SRD level. This is not an SRD issue. So thank you again. Thank you for coming. And we'll have to wait for you to leave before we can continue the meeting. Did you have something else to say, Mr. Benoit?
Just thank you very much for listening.
Thanks,
Quite
you guys.
welcome. Thank you. Okay, onward. Is the room clear, Dave? Tom?
It is, Mr. Chair. We're actually allowed to have folks in attendance here physically. These two gentlemen, I'm not sure if you knew were physically here, so, but they've left, all good.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm still flying under the old rules.
Yeah, no, all good.
Okay. Okay. Adoption of the previous minutes.
Move adoption. Second.
Okay, any corrections or additions, whatever? All those, anyone opposed to adoption? So be it. Okay, petitions and delegations, we already did all this. Sorry. Adoption of previous minutes is what I was actually working on. Adoption of previous minutes.
Moved.
Already done that,
Or
Mr.
motion?
We
Chairman?
did, that's what I thought.
That's what we
been
just
done.
did? Okay,
Yes,
Have we voted on it?
all right.
yes, yes.
Well, I'm working on two computers here, so forgive me. Okay, we voted on it, it's done. Business arising. No business arising. Okay, public considerations, none. Chairs report, none. Staff reports on to Area D Water System Universal Metering Feasibility Study.
Move
Reports from
receipt
the
of
CAO.
report. Move receipt of the CAO's report.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Or did you want to speak to it, Dave?
I think Wolf can speak to it, but just before he does, I'll for Director Lee's benefit, this was one of the conditions to applying for a grant application for the individual meters for Area D. So in order to do that, the province wants to be assured that you're aware of what those costs are going to be when we make a grant application. So the intention of this report study is that we've identified that it's about $2.1 million for individual water meters for the Northern Area D water system. And we'll be using this report to support a grant application for water meters as soon as the next available program comes up. Well, if the committee likes, Wolf can give a brief description of what's within the report.
Okay, Wolf, let's hear your wonderful voice.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I would like to pass this to Jesse Humphreys. He's been assisting engineering services with the development of the feasibility study. Just before I pass this to Jesse, and just to add up to what Dave Leach just said, we were looking into all the different programs for the last couple of days to see if there is an intake available at this time, so we could go and apply for the water meters for Area D. One of the things that we have noticed is that nothing has been announced since 2019, perhaps because of the pandemic. We're keeping our eyes open on this. So as soon as that gets announced, we're planning to put an application. We already have a feasibility study shelf ready and good to go. And in terms of the details and the objectives, some of the conclusions that we have and the costing, I will let Jesse Humphreys to please speak about this. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Wolf. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hi, good morning. Through the chair to the board, or sorry, yes, it's the committee. Yeah, so as you can see with this report, what it really covers is just, it sort of shows us how much water we're using in Area D and the savings that we could have if we went to meters. It also shows our water usage in relation to surrounding areas such as Black Creek, Oyster Bay, as well as municipalities further south of us. Basically, the takeaway is that we're using a massive amount of water, and probably the best way to go about conservation and reduction is through universal meters. We've just gone through the process of installing bulk water meters, and once we start collecting data from that, that should help us identify leaks and losses in the distribution component. But our goal here is to also be able to reduce residential leakage and residential usage. I can answer any questions if you got anything regarding this. Please.
Okay, any members of staff or members of the committee that have questions of either Jesse or Wolf? Brenda, is
Mr.
your hand
Chair,
up?
I just have one question. That is, there's a sort of inference in the report that water could be, might be being stolen. And the only thing that I've ever come across that could fit into that category is that we have a golf course in the district of Campbell, or the city of Campbell River, that is at the end of McGimpsey Road, just beyond Malcolm and Collins Place. And I checked their financial statements from their treasurer for a few years, and they don't have any amount of money coming from the Golf Course Society allocated to water purchases. And in fact, last year, the year before, somebody came out and put a lock box on the meter, changed the locks on the meter box going into the golf course. And I'm just concerned that there might be water going elsewhere into Campbell River that is being provided for free, because that
sorry.
amount.
Hello, I am
Yeah.
going to interrupt you. I believe you're straying into an area that could be an in-camera issue
Okay.
or possibly put us at risk. So I would suggest that you discuss this with staff.
Well, I'd really
and the
like the
CAO.
staff to look into this,
Right.
because it could be a factor, because a lot of people in Area D actually don't
Okay,
believe
you made-
that Area D is using
You have
1
made
million
that-
gallons.
you have made that clear. And I think that you should carry that conversation on privately or at an in-camera meeting.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
let's-
I've already made the point, so staff can look into that if they so wish. And
Thank you for cooperating.
okay, so back to the universal water metering feasibility study. I would make the recommendation that I sent to Edith in writing, that the Strathcona Regional District Board be recommended to proceed with an application for universal metering of the Northern Area D water service in the amount of, now there's two numbers. There's the number in the report that says 2.57 million. And then I heard a verbal that it was 2.17 million from Wolfgang. So whatever the number is, do I
We
need to
have
put
that
that
on the board?
Sorry, I would, if you don't mind, Director Abraham, and through the chair, just to clarify that the estimated cost is 2.4 million using the latest technology that is being implemented in other regional districts and municipalities. The 2.1 million was the study that's the estimate that was submitted in the study back in 2019. However, we explore a couple options in this feasibility study. And once the program is being announced, we will decide whether we go with to choose the type of technology. But right now, what we're proposing is to go with the latest one, which is 2.4 million.
Okay,
Okay,
now.
could we please see on the screen, Tom?
Sorry, could you please repeat that back to me?
No, I'm asking Tom Yates if we could please see the motion on the screen. On our computers.
Edith has it.
Can I ask the mover how it differs from the motion recommended and why the suggested difference?
There's a difference because of whatever,
Excuse
whatever. Okay, sorry.
Excuse me, folks. As the chair of the committee, I would really like to see the other motion, the one that you are making now. I'd like to see it so that I know what it is we're talking about. Right now, all I'm seeing is the staff recommendations A and B, but I'm not seeing
the
what it
motion.
is that you're proposing. Yes, which is the motion. So is there a way to put that up so that we can see what it is that differs?
Would Dee Dee need me to resend it to her? I mean, I sent all of them to her.
Okay, Tom or Dave, I'm looking to you for some advice here. Hello?
I don't think anyone in the staff is hearing us at all. I don't know what's happening. Dave is looking like he hasn't heard anything.
Dave, have you heard me?
Jim, you want to try to text Dave? I'm only on the phone, so I don't have any
Here.
visual of.
I'll go into the chat and let them know that we need to see the motion. Okay, type a message.
Yeah, you're
Not sure where
faster
they all
than I
went.
am. Go ahead, Brenda. Yeah, I could see Dave's mouth moving, but I couldn't hear him. Wolfgang, you have your hand up. Would you like to speak in the meantime?
I'm able to hear the comments from Director Lee, and it seems to me like the recommendation that we have in the report aligns with the motion that Director Lee has. So I'm just waiting for this motion to be posted so we can cross-check against the report, but I think we are on the same page. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sending them
And
the
then
message.
Okay, I just got a message from someone, I missed it. It says that the mics are all of a sudden not working. So
Okay, shall
due to technical difficulties, we interrupt this broadcast.
Shall I type the
Yes.
motion in the chat so everyone can see it? And then we don't have to wait for Edith?
Well, it's
Do
not going
you
to work
want-
for the whole meeting.
Well, no, but for this issue, should I just type the message in the chat or type the motion?
Okay.
Just
He's headed upstairs. Please hold. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
you couldn't
There's
hear us.
Dave.
Yeah, sorry, I went back to my office. I was in the boardroom. We could hear you and we were talking, but it doesn't sound like you can hear any of us. So I just ran
Correct.
back up to my office there. So
We couldn't hear any of you.
yeah,
Yeah, I
we
was
could hear and
asking
see.
you and I was
Sorry about that.
asking you and Tom for some advice. I wasn't getting it.
Yeah, no, we
Boy,
could
oh
hear you,
boy.
and we were talking back, but couldn't hear us. I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm just be patient. I'm gonna tell Tom to go back to his desk here. I don't know why. Tom, can you hear me?
Let's take a 5-minute break, folks.
Yeah,
Let's take a
that's a good
5-minute
idea.
break, okay? It's 20 after 5 minutes. We'll call this meeting back to order. Thank you. Your 5 minutes are up.
Second.
And now we can carry on the conversation. Okay, Brenda, your hand's up, or does that mean you still want to talk or
Oh,
what?
I just want to move that motion that's up on the board now.
Okay,
the one
moved.
that-
Is there a second?
Second it, Gerald.
Okay, Gerald, second. Any discussion?
Can I just have it read out? Sorry, I'm just on the phone and can't see the board.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so that the Strathcona Regional District Board be recommended to proceed with an application for universal metering of the Northern Area D water service in the amount of 2.47 million, and that all engineered cost estimates are prepared for a touch read system to be installed in Northern Area D as soon as grant funds are made available.
Thank you.
Were you able to hear that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is up there, and according to a note in the chat, Wolfgang has written that the motion aligns with the recommendation in the report. Total cost estimate is 2.47. So thank you for that, Wolf. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there any further discussion on it? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? That's carried. Okay, so next item, item 2, commemorative gifts in regional district parks. Report from the CAO.
Move receipt.
Second.
Any discussion? I understand there was a motion.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, so just we brought, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Dave.
Okay, thanks. So we brought our report back to a previous East Committee meeting about recommending a policy that was not supported. So we still are getting requests for gifts. And I think the direction was that we bring them back as one-offs then to deal with as people bring things forward. So we've provided 3 options there for the committee. And I believe that the alternative B is something that the committee kind of directed staff to deal with them as one-off. But those are options for the committee to move or not, A, B, or C.
Okay, well, let's make it official. Thank you for that, Dave. I appreciate it. And
I'd like to
somebody
move.
would like to move up.
You
Yes.
call the question on receipt?
I'd like some discussion under receipt, please.
Okay, on receipt, sorry. Discussion.
May I? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, when this came to committee, I think just last month, Jim spoke quite passionately, or Director Abrams spoke quite passionately, and I concurred about how simple this has been and could be by simply working with staff and the director. And I know that that's not this current administration's approach or desired approach. It has worked. I think it can be very simple that way. There was a bench put in Welltown Commons Park a couple of years ago that was very straightforward. The donor liaised with myself and staff around appropriate location, materials, etc., and provided the bench and installed it, and it didn't need the whole cumbersomeness of staff reports and board decisions. I certainly heard Director Abrams speak very clearly that this is indeed a political matter, and I think to leave it with staff would be unwise, and I think the board or the committee has previously not wanted a policy on it. And I'm curious, I don't know in other jurisdictions, but I know that there's been a request out for many, many months, if not a year or so, for a commemorative beach at Hanks Beach, and there's been a number of emails back and forth between the proposed donor and myself, and there's been relative silence from staff. So I'm just wondering what's happening in the absence of a policy or direction, and how we can move on some of those. And I would have really loved to see an alternative here that is concurrent with current practice, which is simply to have this be an operational matter in consultation with the director from the area. And I'm wondering why that is not one of the options presented to us. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond to that.
If I may answer. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
I think that's exactly
Go ahead,
what
Dave.
staff, yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly what staff are proposing here. We thought it might be simpler to bring a policy. The committee didn't support the policy. So we're saying, hey, we'll bring, when requests come forward, we'll bring and receive the director's input on what they want. Staff are not intending, this report outlines clearly that staff do not want to make the decision. It is political. When we have a request, we will bring it forward and we'll take direction from the committee. I think that's exactly what B is.
So
Okay,
we're speaking not to quite the same thing. What I'm suggesting has happened in the past and that I found has worked very well is that it be considered an operational matter that is simply between staff in consultation with the director. These things have not had to come to the board and generate formal reports and take the time that is required for board's consideration. And so I repeat my question, why is there not an option here for this simply to be an operational matter where staff are in consultation with the director and not through the board formally? Thank you.
Well, again, I'm going to say following board policy that it is the will and the desire of the board to bring all matters to board, not individual directors. So when we have a request, we fulfill the needs of all the directors, not just one. We bring it to the committee and the committee is free to make decisions on it. I am not personally aware of any individual gift or grant that's come in my time here that we have done that. I'm not sure how that's been handled in the past because I'm not aware of anyone. So when we get a request, we simply bring it to the committee and the committee gives us direction.
And
no,
what
but
I'm
I think,
is that
no, but I think,
Hmm.
if I may, I think that what you are saying is just like you and staff are saying the same thing, worded slightly differently, but B covers exactly what you're asking for.
With respect, it's not. And clearly B is going to be the only way that we're going to be able to move forward. But what I'm saying is the gift of a bench that went into the Welltown Commons Park 3 or 4 years ago with Karen Albert working on it did not need to get elevated to the CAO or the board. It was an operational decision. There's all kinds of operational level decisions that happen in parks that don't need to generate staff reports or administrative oversight or board decisions, and it just seems incredibly simple to keep it that way, whereas B elevates it to the administration and the board and takes a lot more time and encumbrance. So I don't think I'm going to win this one, but just for clarity, I really like the process that we currently have. It's efficient and simple, and I would like that. And so my question was, why is that not an option here? And it seems that my question is not being understood.
Okay, any other speakers, first timers? Brenda.
After receipt, I sent an advance motion to Edie and would ask that she put, I would like to move that motion and ask Edie to put it up on the board, please.
Well,
So I'm
finish up
moving.
with the receipt first. Hang on. Okay, so is there any further discussion on receipt? Hearing none. Anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, that's carried. On to the actual item. There's the motion that all public requests for commemorative structures and electoral area parks be referred to the Electoral Area Services Committee.
Second.
That's the motion. That's moved by Brenda, seconded by Gerald. Any discussion? Okay, anyone opposed?
Discussion?
No, I asked for discussion and I didn't hear any.
Okay, there
So
was
you
a
have-
second pause, and I'm trying to work with a phone here and mute buttons. I
All
do
right,
have
so
a question.
Do you have? Did you
Do
want to speak
all
on this?
other- Question through the staff, if I might, Mr. Chair. Is it standard practice now that all individual rural area services go through EASC? I think that is now what we've been doing. These matters that were of individual services used to just go directly to the board. So I'm just trying to get clarity. if Director Lee's motion is following standard practice, bringing these things to East first. And if so, then that's the only option I have, is to support.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, is there anyone opposed to the motion as presented?
Can I have it read, please?
Okay, it's
given that
carried. That all public requests for commemorative structures in electoral area parks be referred to the Electoral Area Services Committee.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was moved by Brenda, seconded by Gerald. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? It's carried. Okay. Onward. Okay, so number 3, request for financial assistance, area C. This is request, or sorry, receipt of report from the CAO.
Move
Dave, do you have
receipt.
anything?
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, Dave?
Nothing to add from staff, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then B is that the committee recommend board approved grants and aid be paid from the electoral area C grant and aid budget as follows: 2,000 quadricultural and 1,000 Sturgeon Narrows Community Association.
Move B. Move B1 and 2.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone opposed? It's carried. Okay, on to bylaws. Bylaw number 43435. This is Treatham Ventures.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, CAO, anything?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Okay.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Discussion on this?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I believe it was just last week the Area B Advisory Planning Commission met and discussed this matter at some length. The staff report on page 3 says that the APC recommended that an amenity, the SOD registered a right-of-way across the property to provide pedestrian access to the waterfront or to Hanks Beach. That is certainly one of the points that was captured in the discussion of the APC, but it was much more robust. There were 3 or 4 really salient points about how to make the application clearer and better and stronger that are not reflected here. The applicant who was present and answered questions of the APC made it clear that she was going to, based on the recommendations for the APC, provide an amended application that integrated the APC's recommendations that were very well received. So shy of asking why that wasn't captured here in the report, my question would be procedurally, what would be the best thing to do here? It would seem to me that I would rather defer this matter for a month and await an update application from the applicant rather than taking this application forward in this process. So I'd love to hear from planning staff.
Okay, Dave, did you want to assign somebody to speak to this?
Yeah, Annika will respond.
Thank you through the chair to the committee. Unfortunately, I was away during the APC meeting last week, and I've yet to be fully updated on the results of the APC. So if I may, can I please defer to Meredith?
Okay, Meredith, would you like to speak?
Thank you. And I'm unmuted. Yes, so the only reason that I guess the full commentary provided from the APC conversation, which to Director Anderson's point was very fruitful, isn't reflected here simply in that we haven't received minutes yet. I mean that the agenda was prepared the day after the APC, so that's just a timing issue. And so what's presented here is just the overall consensus that there was support for the application with that commentary. As far as process goes forward, I'll have to defer to Annika or to Dave as far as the best path if there is an amended application being expected from the applicants for Treatum, but generally from the APC there was support.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you can hear me, but I could just quickly advise in terms of process, if there are changes being anticipated down the road to the application that would affect the construction of the bylaws, then I would recommend that you hold off recommending first and second reading until you've had a chance to consider what those changes might look like and the import of those changes, rather than try to amend the bylaw once you're into first, second, or third reading.
Okay, hearing that, I would suggest we need a motion to defer this until the next meeting.
Move to defer.
Second.
Second, and I would respectfully request then, and I will certainly do so, but that staff follow up with the applicant to advise them that we are anticipating a revised application and the timeline required to get it on the August EASC meeting schedule.
Okay, well, that's up, I guess, up to staff as to whether or not that's normal process or not, but
Well,
certainly it seems reasonable. Okay, so motion to defer and move the seconded. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. It's deferred. The issue is deferred until the next EASC meeting. Okay, and then we are on to correspondence, Friends of Strathcona Park.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, anything on receipt? Okay.
I have
all
a
those in favor?
subsequent.
Anyone opposed? Sorry, Nova?
Yeah, happy to hear the subsequent, but just to advise my rural colleagues that I wouldn't intend to make a grant and aid to this year. My grant and aid funds are exhausted, but happy to entertain others.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I have a
Okay.
subsequent.
First of all, we're on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, hearing none. Receipt has happened, and you have a subsequent, Brenda.
Yes, it's up on the screen that the committee recommend that a grant and aid for the Friends of Strathcona Park in the amount of $3,000 be approved to assist with their park use study conducted by students this summer and to be paid from the Electoral Area D grant and aid budget.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded.
And if I could
Any
just, yes, if I could just speak to, yeah, if I could just speak to their application. They originally, their latest grant and aid application was for $5,000 from the Strathcona Regional District. But because we don't have a joint grant and aid process, it's up to each individual electoral area to contribute if they wish, and they are looking for 5,000, but Area D usually supports them each year for their projects, and it's usually in the amount of 3,000. So if any other director wants to put forward a grant and aid for Friends of Strathcona Park to make up to the 5,000, that would be great, but it's entirely up to you.
Okay, thank you. I would have a comment if no one else wants to go before me. Just as personal comment, I personally do not support the intrusion of a survey person, whether it's a student or otherwise, at the beginning and at the end of my recreational pursuit, which might be, a day-long hike into the wilderness. I don't want to be held up for 15 minutes at the beginning or at the end. So I don't think it's a good idea to even do the thing, but that's up to you. And I will totally support your motion. Anyone else? No?
Well, I know that they're collecting the usage data to be able to supply that information to organizations such as ICE-T to make improvements to the park and the user experience. So I know that they are using this study to try to get further funding from bigger organizations with more money.
Yeah, that's great. I understand why they're doing it. I just told you my personal feeling. That's all.
Yeah, well, at least
Okay.
3,000 is better than nothing.
I'm sure they'll approve of it. Okay. Any further discussion, first of all? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Okay, and that next item would be termination.
Mr. Chair, there was an item of new business.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm sorry, Nova.
That's okay. You asked for a reminder.
Yes, you had it. Yep, I got it.
That's great. May I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
May go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, so I didn't look up the exact dates, but back in the winter, there was a motion passed at board to ask for a staff report on an update generally of our long-range planning documents, our core OCPs and zoning bylaws and associated larger community plans. I note that a lot of our plans are decades old. Cortez's is 20 years old, and that's one of the newer ones. Just from Cortez, we had a failed draft before the committee 3 years ago, and the committee board hasn't heard anything from staff since, and I haven't heard anything of substance either. Back in the spring, I asked just for a verbal update on when we could expect that report, and we heard June. It's now July, and so I'm not only asking for a further verbal update on when we might anticipate that, but if staff could give us a little bit of a sense of is that work actually being undertaken? And if it's not substantively being undertaken for whatever capacity reasons, I think this committee really needs to grapple with what to do in its absence, because long-range planning is the very core reason that regional districts were brought into existence, I would submit. And it's beginning to really hamper, I can only speak for Cortez, but really hamper community planning exercises. A lot of our other plans that social profit organizations do reference our official community plan and zoning bylaws. A lot of funding applications are dependent on them. A lot of the on-the-ground development possibilities are dependent on them. And the social profit community here is beginning to talk about trying to figure out how to fund and do its own update of our OCP. Which is certainly not, I think, what the regional district would want. So I'm just asking for as much substantive update as staff is able to provide on this at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to add one thing, and that is that we were also told many months ago that the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan for Area C, we would have absolutely the report by June, and we're now a month later, and it still hasn't shown up. And as Director Anderson has mentioned, one thing depends on another. And the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan originally was conceived to help us be the precursor to an OCP review and a rural land use review for the outer islands, and all of the planning processes that have to go on Reed Island for the new community, quote unquote. And, you know, we really can't move without getting that report. And I haven't heard anything from those people. Dylan and Associates, sorry, just remember the name. We just haven't heard anything. So it would be nice to get some updates now and then, even if it's just a matter of, sorry, we haven't heard anything. But I think we should be hearing something. We paid for it, and or will be paying for it. And so I have to agree with Dr. Anderson. It would be nice to have some of these long-range issues updated now and then. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can, just quickly, I think I promised the committee that it would come in the summer, an update report from planning. Planning obviously has to deal with priority issues. We've had many legal issues, bylaw enforcement issues that have overwhelmed planning, and it's still our intention to bring a report in either August or at the latest September to the committee.
And that would be the report that Director Anderson is talking about, or some of the individual ones that, like the one that I mentioned, because that was a June deadline.
Yeah.
We still now have that.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I just want to remind the committee that at the board meetings, when we have additional resolutions for updates, reports on bylaw enforcement, legal applications, bylaws that keep getting referred back, those take precedent and priority. So if we've said June, right, we have to deal with things on a priority matter. As the board knows in committee, legal matters must take precedent on timelines. We're dealing with those. And so again, it's the intention of staff to bring those forward by August and at latest September.
Okay, thank you, Dave. That answers the question anyway. Whether people like it or not is another matter. Anyway, and is there anything else?
Might I just ask as a follow-up, is the intention of that report then to outline all of the long-range planning documents that we have in rural areas and the anticipated timeline for review, including what Director Abram is speaking to and including the zoning bylaw on Cortez? Because it seems that the committee shouldn't go years without at least any kind of verbal update. And I understand that legal things need to take precedent, but if all of our core foundational planning documents just can't get gotten to because everything else takes precedence for decades, I'm asking that when we get into budget, we have a really serious discussion about what structural changes we need to staffing or resources or contract capacity to address these long-range planning functions. Otherwise, the communities will start doing them, and that's not what we want to see happen.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think the comments are really out of order, referring to the delay of these by decades. This regional district hasn't even existed for decades. You know, we deal with priority matters. We take direction from the board. So, like, I just think those are inappropriate, to be honest with you.
I mean, what I'm saying is that the documents themselves are decades old, and by legislation, they're supposed to be updated every 5 years. They're 20 to almost 30 years old, all of our foundational planning. I'm not saying that the work on the work schedule by the SRD that's only 12 years old is decades, but the actual documents are all decades out of date.
Mr. Chair, Director Lee here.
Get it into on that. We'll just take that point. Go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you. Just because a document is old or older doesn't mean it's not a good document. I'm very happy with my 1996 OCP. It was visionary. It was written by Brian Allert in the planning department at the CVRD. It had extensive consultation. It had very solid input from the public. And it is a visionary document that holds its weight, and it's a living document. All of our bylaws are living documents that change all the time, incrementally. And that's what I believe in. I believe in evolution in planning and not revolution. I think a planning document should be, you know, updated as we go along in the community with proposed amendments to our zoning. And we've done a lot of amendments to both the zoning and the OCP in Area D that have updated it. It is updated. So on a constant basis. The electoral areas spend approximately $1 million a year on planning. And we should be able to get some of the issues like finalized. And I do sympathize with Director Anderson regarding her zoning bylaw, which did go to public hearing. And then because of a lot of staff changes and whatnot, it never came back for amended for consideration. So we've gone out to public hearing on that. We just haven't finalized it. And I think that would be the first step to do in our planning exercises, is to get that Area B zoning bylaw dealt with once and for all. And, you know, and there's probably issues in Area C that I'm not too, you know, familiar with that might need updating as well. But on the whole, I mean, long-term planning is, you know, it comes second to what we're dealing with every single month that we have a meeting. We are up to our eyeballs in alligators all the time. So we need to deal with what's in front of us and try to get to those long-range planning exercises that have been almost completed, but not quite. And Area D is just fine. We don't particularly want any attention from planning on our OCP. We're doing well as it is. So I'm not complaining. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll just to wrap, I think, you know, many of the things that Director Anderson talks about, Director Lee talks about, they're old documents. Ours is very old too, 1990, I believe. So, you know, it's a great document, visionary, et cetera, but every time we get to a complaint on a file from somebody about some issue, once staff puts a whole bunch of time into it, they find out that our bylaw is not enforceable because of the wording. So, you know, those kinds of things I think are the kinds of things that maybe need to be looked at. Just, you know, given to a lawyer, hand it off to somebody and say, here, make this enforceable. And that would be OCP and bylaw. And just move along. I don't want to belabor this, so is there anything else on this particular long-term planning issue? See none. We'll say that's done. What do we don't have to accept this or anything, do we, Dave? What do we do?
No.
All right, so then the next thing, like I said before, when I was wrong.
Move termination. Move
Second.
termination.
I didn't think I'd have any trouble getting a seconder. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I see we have somebody in the audience or joined the chat anyway. I'm not sure where they are, but thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all at 12:30. Have a nice lunch.
Great meeting, Mr. Chair. Thank you.